when does an agent need to know how to switch? Is it at the beginning? And could you give us
Uh,
a brief example in terms of like, do I do equity protection? Do I try to force them into a term if they can get approved?
yeah,
When are you seeing the best time for that transition? Because that's something that it's hard for me as the person, providing the service to tell them like, hey, you need
yeah.
to learn how to read them. They just think I'm just talking. But from your perspective, when should agents know to make that move?
Honestly, when I get a lead in and depending on their age, I'm already looking at their age and I'm like, okay, this might be a little hard to swing, depending on if, so like my last gentleman right here is Victor, is the last lead I just got in. Born in '66, he has 208,000 left on his home. We're probably gonna have to swing some equity protection unless depending on the finances and how long the term length is, I might be able to swing them a 10 or 15-year term. So you already know by their age and their mortgage amount what you're gonna push them and what you're gonna lean more towards. And then it's just questions you ask. At the very beginning of the conversation, you introduce yourself, tell them who you are. You're here to see if you can be of any service to them, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you go into your need analysis, those specific questions, you need to be asking those, but also kind of build up some rapport with them. So sometimes, and me personally, I spend maybe a little too much time on the phone with them, but my policies stick because I build up so much rapport and I let them know, hey, you might not be able to get a term because of this. The underwriting is just a little bit different. Most families I speak to, that's a big thing because they're like, okay, well, most families do this when you tell them that. Most families I speak to, they typically go with a equity protection plan. Now, what that is, it's a permanent protection option here for you. But you also want to ask some individual questions before that, like, hey, who's the house going to be left to? Is it going to be children? Because that's a big thing. If it's going to be left to children, they're probably in their 30s, 40s, et cetera, especially if they're older. Um, so they already have a family, they already have a home. They just need time to get it on the market and sell it. So that's kind of an easy pitch. Now, if it's like, hey, I'm trying to leave money for my wife to stay in the home, it's a little bit harder conversation, but you kind of need to let them know. Questions like, do you have any life insurance? Okay, you have some work coverage. Do you lose that coverage? 90% of the time, you're going to lose that coverage. And you have to paint that picture, be like, hey, what does it look like if your wife or spouse or whoever is left with nothing? And then
Mhm.
once you kind of paint that picture for them, they're like, okay, dang, I need something. But it's just mainly questions you ask at the very beginning of the need analysis, and then you bring that back into in a position when they might ask a question or even hit you with a rebuttal or something like that.